Now, every week we lose one young Irish person to sudden cardiac death syndrome. Since the passing of Tyrone footballer Cormac McAnallen in 2004, cardiac risk in the young has been highlighted across the country thanks to different charities and organisations that provide screening and advice to any parents that suffer with bereavement.
Anna recently travelled to the Cry Centre in Tallaght Hospital with GPA Player of the Year and Dublin footballer Michael Darragh Macauley to evaluate his own cardiac health. Let's take a look.
Sudden adult death syndrome has become all too common in our young people in Ireland, and that's why an organisation like Cry exists. I'm here in Tallaght Hospital in Dublin to find out more. Deirdre, you might tell us first of all, what does Cry do?
Well, Cry is a charity that was set up in 2002 by a couple who lost their son to sudden cardiac death at 15 years of age in 1996, and they discovered at that stage that there were really no services for them to turn to. There was nobody who could really explain why a young person might die of a cardiac illness at that age. There was no emotional support, there was no specific services if the family needed to be tested. So they set up the charity in 2002 with three specific aims: to provide counselling services for families who have also been affected, because unfortunately it still happens, to provide information for people, both the medical community and the general public, about sudden cardiac death and who should worry about it, and to support setting up a centre for evaluating people and families who might be at risk of sudden cardiac death to try and help to prevent this. And where we're sitting now is that centre. So Cry fund a lot of the activity at the Centre for Cardiac Risk in Younger Persons here in Tallaght Hospital. It's also largely supported by the board of Tallaght Hospital as well, and Trinity College and St James's Hospital, and this has been set up so that there is somewhere for people to go. If a sudden death occurs in the family, then there may be a hereditary component to the condition that caused the sudden death, and therefore people in the family may have a 1 in 2 chance of also being affected and may also be at risk.
Michael Darragh is here, Dublin senior footballer. Why is the screening process so important for someone like Michael Darragh?
Well, there will be people who will argue that it isn't, I suppose. I mean, in the general population, the risk of sudden death is not that high, but certainly we know that if you have any underlying heart conditions, then if you exercise to a high level, that certainly increases your risk. And when people are going to do exercise professionally, or when somebody like Michael Darragh, who does it officially on an amateur level, so he gets absolutely no financial compensation, but probably does it to a higher level than many professional sports people, then he is subjecting his body to quite a high intensity of exercise for many, many years, we hope, to come, and therefore it's quite important, I think, that everybody knows that he is physically up to the activity. I think there is a little bit of a misunderstanding that if you exercise too intensively, you can go be a perfectly normal person and you will die suddenly. That's not true. If you're perfectly physically normal, you can't exercise yourself to the point of death. Sure. But if you have an underlying condition, you're increasing your risk, and you may be doing that in blissful ignorance. So for people who are exercising to this level, you can certainly argue that being tested is important so that you can do that comfortably with peace of mind.
Michael Darragh, is it something that you've become much more aware in recent times, given some awful deaths?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's really kind of shook the GAA community. I suppose maybe Cormac McAnallen was probably one of the first ones that really brought it into the spotlight, and there's been far too many since. With Kieran Carr as a young fella out in Round Towers, and there's been plenty of examples. Even just recently with the marathon runner, and I know they're still looking into that. Like, so. Yeah, look, it's something that I think is just really important, that we have to kind of look at it, like, and if there is any sort of testing that we can do to try and kind of screen out some of these difficulties, let's just get it done and try and find out these weaknesses.
Absolutely, and I think he's right. What's involved for Michael Darragh today, Deirdre?
Well, there's sort of three main parts to the testing that we would do for somebody at Michael Darragh's level. So the first thing that we do, well, we would usually go through whether there's any family history of cardiac issues or that sort of thing, in case there's anything that would sort of start ringing alarm bells for me, and also run through any symptoms with him, as whether or not he's found it difficult to keep up with others. We know from seeing him on the TV and in Croke Park that he obviously hasn't.
I don't know about that now.
And the results are instant once the tests are done today?
Pretty much instant. I mean, occasionally find a little bit of looking and measuring, but basically within 5 or 10 minutes of finishing the test we'll know the results. Yeah.
Michael Darragh, are you happy enough to get going?
Yeah, a little scared, but yeah, we'll go on.
We'll get going, okay. Between 60 and 80 people a year pass away from sudden cardiac death, and this is why organisations like CRY are so important for families with any heart problems right across the country. Although Michael Darragh Macauley is one of the fittest sports players in the country, these tests will confirm that Michael Darragh is healthy enough to play the game he loves. After our interview with Michael Darragh, he changes into his sports gear to prepare for the examination. First up, Dr. Deirdre Ward records an ECG. An ECG is a recording of the electrical activity in the heart. The nurse places stickers onto Michael Darragh's chest, and this test takes only 2 minutes to perform, and the results can be read almost immediately by the doctor. After the ECG, Michael Darragh meets up with Alison, one of CRY's technicians, and she performs an ultrasound. This scan identifies structural heart problems. Alison takes different size pictures of Michael Darragh's heart. This process can take about 30 minutes for the results. CRY finish off the examination with an exercise test. This should be no problem to Michael Darragh. This test indicates how the heart performs under pressure. There's no requirement on the length of time someone can run on the treadmill, but the fitter the person, the longer they'll last. Well, Michael Darragh, sorry to interrupt you at this point. How's it all going?
Interrupt away. Yeah, no, it's going grand. I think I'm 6 minutes in. So,
Nearly 7, I'm told.
yeah, so hopefully I'm still alive come 12. We'll see how we get on. Yeah, no, it's grand. It's only kind of goes up in pace every 2 minutes, so I'm still alive anyway.
Still alive and you're well able for it. We'll leave you to it.
Thanks very much.
Well, Michael Darragh, probably not an ideal time to talk to you. How did you get on?
Grand, yeah. I think I probably would have got a bit better about a month ago, but yeah, it's grand. I suppose it's kind of as tough as you make it. It's as long as you go for, as long as you kind of get your heart rate up. So I think I got there just about.
I think you did. I think you're well able, actually, aren't you?
I don't know about that. more well able in August and September now.
Of course, yes.
It was a long.
How are you feeling about the results?
Yeah, it's very interesting now. I'd like to see how we get on and just rule out any sort of problems that hopefully won't occur. Like, but yeah, I know I have a good family history of heart in the family, so hopefully I kind of hopefully I don't have too many problems there.
Of course, nice to get a little bit of peace of mind, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah, exactly. It is just so prevalent amongst. It just keeps popping up every month or two, every few months. So yeah, a bit of peace of mind in my own head would be great, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, stay with us. After the break, we'll get the results.
Now, before the break, we watched Tallaght Dublin footballer Michael Darragh Macauley as he underwent cardiac screening tests with CRY. Michael Darragh joins us now to find out his results, along with Dr. Deirdre Ward, consultant cardiologist with CRY.
And also joining us is Barry Keane, and Barry's friend Kieran Carr was 20 when he collapsed while training for GAA. His death was attributed to what is commonly known as sudden adult death syndrome, or SADS. Barry, you're very welcome.
Welcome one and all.
Barry, the Kieran's death, it is the Kieran Carr Foundation that is ultimately named after him. Tell us what happened that day.
We just went training as normal over Friday night. It was pre-season training, so it was pretty tough, just a normal session though for that time of year. About 3 weeks into pre-season at that stage, and during the training session, about the last set, so we're all pretty tired and Kieran collapsed.
Was there any precursor? Was he feeling poorly?
No, he came down training as normal that night.
Super fit, super healthy?
Yeah, well, super fit, for the normal young lad, but fit, healthy, nothing out of the ordinary that night. He didn't say to anybody, I'm not feeling well, but just...
And he collapsed, and then when people got to him, was he conscious?
As far as I know, he wasn't, no. Now, there were a couple of lads in our team who were trained in CPR to use a defib and stuff. We've guards, teachers and physios and the like. and they were on him straight away. You know,
Using
they
a
copped
defib?
it. No, the defib had to be brought from the club. We were
Okay.
training in our school hall, and they were working on him until the emergency services got there.
And when he was diagnosed, when you ultimately found out that it was SADS, was that something you guys were aware of? Was it something that was, you know, in your minds?
We knew that night.
Did you?
We left the hall. The team were brought out of the hall, you know, and Kieran was being worked on and stuff. And the first thing that popped into my head was Cormac McAnallen and Mark Vivian Foy, the Cameroon footballer who died. That was the first thing that popped into my head, and I said, this can't be happening, you know, because we could see Kieran in there, you know. So.
And the foundation then was set up to achieve what?
Originally it was a programme in our club to make sure that it didn't happen to us again, you know. And in April 2013 we launched down in Croke Park as a foundation. And what we want to do is do the basics right, which is train managers to use defibs to make sure somebody's there on hand. You know, the emergency services could take 5 or 10 minutes to get there, and it's really urgent that a person is seen to straight away. And it's to screen our players in round towers as well. And we hope that by doing that, we're doing the basics right, and other people will copy us, other clubs and sports communities.
That brings us to Michael Darragh and to Deirdre, because it is only screening, Deirdre, that makes the difference, isn't it? That is the thing that is the central difference between catching this or not catching.
Well, it is. I mean, sometimes people will have warning symptoms and either not recognise them or perhaps choose to ignore them if they're worried that they might find something. Sometimes people tend to kind of put their head in the sand. But about 50% of people probably never got any warning at all, and the only way you are going to catch that is by screening. It is a little bit controversial as to whether you put everybody in the country through a screening programme, but certainly people who are going to exercise to a very high level, I think it's sensible to consider. There are always downsides to going to a perfectly healthy person and looking for trouble, and if you find it, then they don't necessarily thank you because they don't feel like they're a life saved, but it certainly is something.
Well, it could be a life
really
saved, couldn't
exactly,
it? And Michael, very kindly, Michael Darragh, you chose to go undergo screening, and we thank you for doing that. And I know you've had your results from Deirdre. Deirdre, can you tell us what Michael's results were?
Well, I suppose the bottom line is that he has a perfectly healthy heart, fitter than most. He's got a really nice slow resting pulse rate to indicate fitness. His resting ECG, the kind of fingerprint of his heart, is perfectly normal. Anybody who knows what they're looking at when they showed the VT of his heart on the ultrasound, it's beautiful. It really is a textbook normal heart. Yeah.
You have a beautiful heart, Michael Darragh.
I'm a little sad that I find those sort of things particularly attractive. He's a really, really nice heart on the ultrasound, no structural abnormalities, and on the treadmill test, as you might expect, he did way above average in terms of fitness levels. And what we look for is signs of any rhythm changes, any suggestion that the heart muscle is being starved of oxygen, and there was no problem with any of that.
Can I ask a question? Once you've been screened once, like Michael Darragh has, does that mean you're good to go for life, or should you be screened every couple of years? I mean, can things change in your heart as, you know, physiologically you do change?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, there's a lot of changes that happen through the teenage years, and particularly if you're doing a lot of sport when you're going through your growth phase. So usually the people who do kind of programs for screening will do it every 2 years through the teenage years. And then obviously when you get to the older age group and people are continuing to exercise, then the things like hardening of the arteries, which are not the cause in younger people, can come in as well. And that's very often people who die after marathons. It's very often that they have a degree of hardening of the arteries and they just aren't supplying the heart muscle with enough blood because of the amount of exercise and the amount of narrowing. So that's a reason for maybe considering it at a later date as well.
And in terms of the screening itself, Michael Darragh, it didn't appear to be that arduous a process to go through.
I'd like to see you go through
I was just going to invite Anton.
He's incredibly fit, he's an athlete.
Well, they didn't have to open him up or anything.
I think I was a little fitter back in August and September now, but yeah, no, I was happy to be the guinea pig here today to undergo. It kind of gives you a bit of peace of mind, you know, in your own head that, like, okay, everything is going on, because we've all heard these stories far too many times now.
You were saying to me, Michael Darragh, that you had an ultrasound before as part of a screening process, so there is a high level of awareness within the GAA about how important it is to screen athletes.
Yeah, in fairness, the GPA have set up a cardiac screening initiative, which has gone very well, and I think they've screened over 1,700 players to date. So I think the biggest example recently in the news is Shane McInerney, the former Meath captain, and that was actually through the screening program from the GPA that they were able to find a defect, and he ended up having a double bypass surgery, which saved his life. So it's brilliant. If the more people we can get screened, the more of these kind of things we can find out, the more lives we can save.
And are you guys all trained now? I mean, if somebody goes down on a pitch, would you know what to do, or is there somebody there who knows what to do?
There is someone on every team, well there should be anyway, that is training the process, and you probably are right, there probably is more people that probably should come in commonplace amongst the players as well, because it could happen in the gym when it's just ourselves, so that probably is an area we have to look at.
Yeah, but it's great that the awareness is there and you are conscious of it.
You can't not be with the Kieran Carr story and the Cormac McAnally and just all these kind of high profile stories. It's definitely in the back of everyone's head at this stage. Yeah.
Is it because we know the stories now, or is it more prevalent than it has been before?
Well, again, that's a good question. I think it is more awareness, and it's the kind of thing where previously, 50 years ago, if a young person dropped dead, it was very often not even investigated. Nobody thought it could be a heart problem in a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old, and death certificates might have said ruptured appendix or acute pneumonia or stuff that we now know to be rubbish. So we don't necessarily think it's increasing, but we haven't been collecting the statistics, so we'll only know that with time.
So we're still losing 60 to 80 young Irish people under the age of 35 every year.
Yeah.
And Barry, would you like to finish, because you saw Kieran lose his life that night, and God forbid that happens to anybody else to have to go through that. I don't know what it must have been like for you. Horrific, I can only imagine. What would you like to say to people who are involved in sport, or parents even who have young sons and daughters involved in sport?
To any parents, teachers, community members or leaders out there, don't leave it until it's too late. You know, get in touch with us, we can help you fundraise, put defibs in schools, sports clubs, whatever. So don't leave it until it's too late. Just get in touch and we can help you do it.
Fantastic. You know? So people can get in touch how?
At www.kierancarfoundation.ie. We're on Facebook, Twitter.
Fantastic.
All the rest, all the contact details.
And Deirdre, Cry obviously is available for people. They can ask for screening. You can elect to be screened.
You can. I mean, we can't screen everybody in the country, so we really focus on families who've had a sudden death or who have an inherited condition, because a lot of these conditions are inherited. But obviously, if anybody's concerned, go to their GP, and if the GP is concerned, they can contact us.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. And Michael Darragh, thank you for being our guinea pig. Much appreciated.